So the Tao Te Ching is the book of the virtue or the strength or really the magical properties, is in the magical properties of a medicinal or a blessed plant. The book of the magical properties of the natural way. And today I want to look at chapter 17, which is just a couple of stanzas, literally two stanzas and one extra line. And really, it's just one main, the last final stanza in there that really stands out, that is really important for people who are trying to understand spirituality or to develop further their spirituality, or even if you're already fully enlightened, this is still something that's extremely useful. And that is what we're going to read in chapter 17. But before we get to that, uh, since I'm going to be showing you the copy that I use, which is all written over and scribbled on all sorts of psychobabble and me trying to like decipher every single possible uh, secret meaning to gain more power that it possibly held, even though I had already been enlightened. When I first got this book from my aunt, I took it from her house because I didn't think she was using it. Sorry, Aunt Bonnie. I'll give it back to you, or I'll make it up to you for sure, because this one's really, it's been across many countries and continents over many years in many, many, many places, and it's pretty beaten up, and it's been drawn on by my daughter, and it's full of psychobabble from me trying to not understanding the simple message that the words themselves say, you know, of simply being in the way, of really just not trying so hard to be somebody, to like when we want to do something and we're worried about not so much doing that action or completing the action or the fruits even of that action for ourselves and other people, but we're more concerned, we become lost at least somewhere along the way about what it looks like to other people. It becomes all about that. Even, as soon as we set the intention to do something uh you know um benevolent, something beneficial to ourselves, especially to others, then right away comes that little ego to take that prize and claim it as my own. So um, this book is not my own, and Aunt Bonnie, I will make it up to you. I'll send you a copy of my book, The Night I Got Enlightened, because you were an instrumental part in that by being so kind and generous to me. So please continue to be so kind and generous to me. And Aunt Bonnie and everybody else out there, please subscribe to my channel, and that's the most important thing you could do for me, and I could keep on improving, getting out more content, better content. Make recommendations in the comments if you want me to talk about specific topics related to spirituality, or how spirituality relates to other topics that aren't about spirituality. It could be anything that's on your mind. Love to hear from you, so please reach out. And the the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu, being an older contemporary of Confucius, is sort of in line with the concept that many people have had for a long time, that Taoism itself is sort of a religion or a way of life or a philosophy, really a blend of those three things for retired people, for grand folks, retired people who don't have much else to fill the time with, so they resort to simply meditating, and that makes a lot of sense. But that has been there have been exceptions that are extremely important to note. For example, the first one that comes to mind, um, I'll just mention this one for now. I should do more research into it. But Bruce Lee, who's arguably one of the greatest, inarguably one of the greatest martial artists of all time, was a Taoist, and he when he was injured from a cheap shot after winning a fight, his back was broken by a cheap shot. He was in the hospital for a long time, barely able to move. He was on bed rest or whatever you call it, and then he he wrote and drew the pictures for this for the moves, the exercises related to Jeet Kune Do, and he wrote the book called Jeet Kune Do and developed this new style of no style, which is very much in line with Wu Wei, the the method of no method. Uh, the magic is not the power, all the cities, all the magic powers and telepathic powers that people seek in the spiritual path, or people experience, or people fear, or all the different ways people react to these things, or people that say that they're not important. Um, they're extremely enjoyable, and in that much, they're definitely important. Sometimes they are important for other reasons, of course. That should be needless to say. They can even be miracles that save many, many, many lives. It could be a miracle that saves one life. It could be a miracle that improves somebody's life in some small, tiny way. Many different things. But all of this happens because of Wu Wei. Um, and this is known in Native American traditions as well. With, for example, there's a fantastic book called I'll have to bring it over. It's over there on the shelf. Wild Steps to Heaven. Let me look that up real quick. Wild Steps to Heaven by Victor Villasenor, I believe it is, something like that. And that book goes into his family story where his uh, grandmother, I believe it was, or his mother, was made into a medicine woman. This is right around the time where the very last traditions of the indigenous people of this part of Mexico were just being eradicated by these pretty, according to this story and many others, these bloodthirsty um, Spanish conquistadors. I know they weren't. I'm not saying all Spanish people were like that, or definitely now are not like that. But this story is one of the most brutal of human history, and amazing too. And the point is that I'm getting at is that this woman was made a medicine woman by the community. She was danced. They danced around her, and they did their ritual with different things they did. I think it involved some chicken's blood and some wild dancing, and they um, they all put their faith and their authority, their will power into her as their representative. And then when she went on a quest to seek help for their town and for her son, who was being completely, unfairly treated by a powerful military man, um, as was all their people, you know, she things happen around her, and this is Wu Wei. This is the Tao. So like in the same way when I do these podcasts, I don't really plan them. I don't have a script or anything that I follow off of. I don't do that ever when I speak. It's not necessary. It just flows. Because you're not doing this extra act, this extra trying. You're just being. You're just being. That's it. Has some good iced tea. And there is I was carrying this with me once after Sundance when I went back to classes at college for a brief period of time. I was carrying this with me, and I had a very deep conversation with this cool dude from one of my classes, music theory class, I think it was, who recommended to me Jeremy Narvey's The Cosmic Serpent, which I read, and that was also extremely important for understanding more about ayahuasca and the incredible wisdom, spiritual insights of the Amazonian people by I believe he's a Swedish anthropologist, Jeremy Narvey. Anyway, fantastic book. Highly recommend it. It's definitely a must read. So, anyway, chapter 17. Chapter 17. And I'm going to start with just the last stanza. And then I'm going to go back to the beginning, I guess, chapter 1, and then kind of build back up to chapter 17 and read the rest of it. So, chapter 17, the, the final stanza says, when actions are performed Without unnecessary speech, people say, "We did it." When actions are performed without unnecessary speech, people say, "We did it." Now, it's important to understand here that this book is up till now and then afterwards from chapter 17 onwards is also talking to one who is a saint, a sage, a leader, a wise person, an enlightened person. This is the character who is being trained by studying this book and by following this way of no way, wu wei. So, and there's many examples of this in chapter 1, and this is also, before going any further, really before even getting into the Tao, it's sort of just a teaser, but before getting into the Tao, it must be said, and anybody who knows anything about Tao will be, hounding at my inbox saying that I left this out if I don't cover it. But the important thing is that, as it says here in chapter 1, I made all my lovely psychobabble here, um, clearly not seeing the forest through the trees. It says, "The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one can see the manifestations. These two spring from the same source, but differ in name. This appears as darkness, darkness within darkness, the gate to all mystery." So that's a pretty good intro, huh? Pretty good way to start a book. So, and by the way, Aunt Bonnie, when I send you that copy of my book, I'll send you a signed copy of my book, and that way you can make your money back for this one. It says it costs $2.95 here on the back. So you can make your money back if you sell it on eBay, a signed copy of my book when it comes out. All right, sound fair? Um, anyway, this is this is a separation being made between clearly the Tao that is the way and the Tao that can be communicated in words or written down and studied in such a way as we study in school and study in the university. And I'm not putting down that type of learning. I'm just saying that is a type of learning, but it's like a microcosm of what this life itself is. So then we go on to chapter 2, and we see here, "Therefore the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching, no talking. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease, creating yet not possessing, working yet not taking credit," like chapter 17. "Work is done and then forgotten, and therefore it lasts forever." And the beginning of chapter 2 is, "Under heaven all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Therefore having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow one another." Are you starting to catch on to this pattern? Talks about the wise, therefore, in chapter 3, "The wise therefore rule by emptying hearts and stuffing bellies, weakening ambitions." This is like equivalent to weakening ambitions and strengthening bones. This is like real love. This is like prayer with action, because prayer without action is, worthless. So, if nothing is done, then all will be well. Get your ego out of the way, in everything that we do. Because chapter 4 starts off with the Tao is an empty vessel. It is used but never filled. What? Don't I have to become enlightened? Don't I have to become spiritual? Don't I have to become a good person? Don't I have to be a decent human being? Don't I have to do my job? Don't I have to work, feed my kids, take care of my responsibilities in life? You know? I mean, until you get really good at it, you do. When you get really good at it, it just happens. So, oh, unfathomable source of 10,000 things, blunt the sharpness, untangle the knot, soften the glare, merge with dust. O hidden deep but ever present, I do not know from whence it comes. Wakantanka, the great mystery. It is the forefather of the emperors. Chapter 5 is a important warning, but I'm going to stay on the chapter 6 as well. Very important message. Stay on the track of the sage, like here in chapter 7. The sage stays behind, thus the sage is ahead. The sage is detached, thus at one with all. Through selfless action, the sage attains fulfillment. Chapter 9 talks about the way of heaven. Chapter 10 talks about loving all men and ruling the country. Loving all people and ruling the country is what it means. Being without cleverness. Opening and closing the gates of heaven. Can you play the role of woman? So, chapter 12, a short chapter, I'll read the whole thing. The 5 colors blind the eye, the 5 tones deafen the ear, the 5 flavors dull the taste. Racing and hunting madden the mind, precious things lead one astray. Therefore the sage, again, is guided by what the sage feels and not by what the sage sees. The sage lets go of that and chooses this. Lets go of that and chooses this. "15. The ancient masters were subtle, mysterious, profound, responsive. The depth of their knowledge is unfathomable. Because it is unfathomable, all we can do is describe their appearance. Watchful, like those crossing a winter stream. Alert, like ones aware of danger. Courteous, like visiting guests. Yielding, like ice about to melt. Simple, like uncarved blocks of wood. Hollow like caves, opaque like muddy pools. Who can wait quietly while the mud settles? Who can remain still until the moment of action? Observers of the Tao do not seek fulfillment. Not seeking fulfillment, they are not swayed by desire for change. But weren't they just talking about the sage achieving fulfillment? Yes, but they're also talking about not trying. Fulfillment is when you just let things be. This is the same thing that Buddha talks about when giving up desire is the only is the way to get rid of suffering. The Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, that suffering exists and that the cause of suffering is desire. We desire because of our ignorance and our fear. We're ignorant because of our fear to learn and to face the facts and not be ignorant. But we shouldn't be, and if we follow the Eightfold Noble Path, then we will become liberated of desire and therefore liberated of suffering. But that's just, the surface solution to the problem. You gotta walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So, chapter 16 talks about emptying yourself of everything, letting the mind rest at peace. The 10,000 things rise and fall while the self, with a capital S, watches their return. Self is one that watches them. Now, it says here about enlightenment in some translations. Here it uses a different term. Um, but anyway, it says returning to the source is stillness. Because the 10,000 things rise and fall while the self watches their return, they grow and flourish and then return to the source. Returning to the source is stillness, which is the way of nature. The way of nature is unchanging. Knowing constancy is insight, because the only constant is change. Not knowing constancy leads to disaster. Expecting that things are going to stay permanent, not understanding impermanence. Knowing constancy, the mind is open, the mind is not grasping, and therefore the mind is not suffering. When things change and things dissolve and things don't work and things come that we want and things go, and the mind reminds itself all the time that all of these things are not real. It's not about punishing yourself or living an austere life, although that can be a path to help people understand this. It certainly is effective for some people. But it can also become like a trophy that people collect to show how austere they are. And it can become a trap as well. However, being open minded, you will be open hearted. Being open hearted, you will act royally. Being royal, you will attain the divine. Being divine, you will be at one with Tao. Being at one with Tao is eternal. And though the body dies, the Tao will never pass away. And now we come back to chapter 17. The very highest is barely known by people. Then comes that which they know and love. Then that which is feared. Then that which is despised. The one who does not trust enough will not be trusted. When actions are performed without unnecessary speech, people say, "We did it." So, the saint, the sage, the wise person, the leader, the ruler, the monarch, whoever is studying this, and this is not necessarily a grandiose personality. This could be a grandparent, certainly. Could be a parent. It could be an older sibling. Could be a younger sibling. It could be any community member who finds themselves growing more connected to all that is, to the Tao, to this universe. And again, it goes beyond just this universe too, but these words cannot fully capture the true Tao that is, the true great mystery, Wakantanka, as the Lakota term means. It is unfathomable. That is truly the essence of it, and that is what wise people understand. It's not to say that there's things people will use this to say, when you present certain information or something that they don't want to hear, they'll say, well, you don't really know that because after all, it's unfathomable. This reality is a great mystery, right? Especially, with certain topics, they'll try to wiggle out that way, but they can't really do that because there are things that can be known within this great mystery. Um, all barriers are impermanent. So the best thing to do is to stop putting up these barriers and trying to hold these barriers. And I'm talking about barriers that we put up between ourselves and other people, between ourselves and our community members, ourselves and our coworkers, ourselves and our partners at home, ourselves and our children, ourselves and our pets, our neighbors, the people sitting next to us on the airplane, on the bus, the other drivers on the street. And I know that's a tough one. I'm really, really bad at that one. I've been really. It was easy where I lived before, but out here in the city, this is challenge mode for sure. This is difficult. I'm not doing too good. So this episode is for me too. Definitely be meditating on this. Just preparing for this episode. It wasn't a lot of preparation, like I say, but just thinking about wanting to do an episode on that one concept from the Tao, and now actually doing it has already been helpful to me. And so this time I wanted to do something outside and show a little bit of the beauty. The camera's not great, but you can see some of the nice plants and the Pacific Ocean in the background there. And please, you know, subscribe and let me know if you have anything further that you would like to discuss, get into. Um, in a future episode, and just just to close up this concept of when something is done, the people say, we did it, we did it. And so many translations include the phrase, we did it ourselves. The feeling that when the best leader leads their people the right way, and remember I could be talking about in your family, or we could be the people being led. There's also a noble way to be led. It is it is done in a way where there's not all of this lording it over them, or whatever it might be that is done usually in, I guess I would say, our mainstream American society, which has kind of gotten away from this natural essence that it really still has so strongly you know permeated throughout the entire land. So the accomplishment of one becoming enlightened is attributed to the guru, attributed to the one who bestowed enlightenment upon thee, upon God, or is it your accomplishment? It's a very interesting question, relating about the self, relating to the question about the self, the nature of self. Who is the self? What is the omnipresence of God? What does omnipresence mean? Where does the self physically exist? And could the self physically exist separate from God if God is omnipresent? No, because then God would, by definition, not be omnipresent. And God is omnipresent. And it's not that God has to be omnipresent to be God, but I'm getting into another topic here entirely, but not really. It just kind of sounds like that. I'm just talking about it in a different dialect, a different, flavor of language, so to speak. So, anyway, this episode 6 of the Back to Truth Foundation. Thanks for checking it out, and I'll be talking to y'all again soon, and I'll be checking out for your recommendations for further topics to get into. Have a nice day and a nice rest of the week, a nice weekend in the Tao, and I'll catch up with you soon.